this room, please.
All right, so I'm curious, has anybody in here ever heard of the bucket brigade? That's a term actually. So before fire trucks, if there was a fire in town, people had to get buckets of water and they would do a line of people from wherever the fire was to a pond or a river, and they would pass buckets down the line, fill them up with water, and pass them back, and people would throw it on the fire. Okay. So over here in this, I wanted to show you guys. So these are leather buckets, and they hold 3 gallons of water. And these are from as early as the 1700s. And the art on there, the folk art, is what makes them very rare and valuable. Some of these buckets are worth, to the right person, around $20,000. So, yeah, here's some parade hats that firemen would wear in a parade. A lot of times after a fire, they would do a parade through town and say, "Look at us! We all work together as a community, and we put out a fire. Here's some rattles that they would bring." Over here, you guys can see. You see these lanterns?
Yeah, you guys can start following the show,
Yeah,
so
feel
you
free
can go by.
to look around and follow me. So these lanterns, some of them were carried by the firemen, and the different colors would signify their rank, whether they were a chief or a commander, things like that. And these top bigger ones are ones that were on the fire trucks, the pumpers or the steam engines or the fire trucks. So pretty cool. Yeah, so as we follow along here, you guys will be able to see these toys. These are cast iron toys. Wow. And as we go down the line, you can see the evolution of how they changed. The first ones were pulled by hand, actually. And then the fire trucks and carts and different things were pulled by horses. And then, of course, you have engines like we see today. So we can walk down the line. You guys can check out these cool cast iron toys. Watch out. Yeah. That's a hose cart. This is a pretty cool place. Yeah, that's learning.
You can take pictures if you want to.
Yeah, we have some old fire helmets that are really neat.
Yeah, I see it. They don't want you to touch. Okay. Yeah, that's where the horses would be.
Yeah, I'll talk about the fire pumpers here soon.
Oh, you stay here. You stay here.
You taking some pictures?
Yeah.
Video? Cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey,
Joel.
Julie? Important stuff.
It is. Okay, leave them alone. Come on. Look at the stuff. We're here to look at the stuff, not RC's phone.
Okay. As you all are continuing to come down this way, I'll talk a little bit about the fire helmets. So we have some really neat old fire helmets. And one of the things that we like to point out is the piece that's called the finial. And the finial is the metal piece that holds the front plaque. Normally it's a leather plaque. Holds it to the helmet. And a lot of times you'll see the finial being an eagle or a horse. Those are more common finials. Of course, the eagle shows like American pride, and that one's more common. But we have a few that has a beaver, You'll see a seahorse, and those are really rare. And so these are neat collector's pieces on these fire helmets. All right, we can continue to move forward. Yeah, feather on that helmet, huh? We have a lady who comes in here every month and cleans, opens everything up, and cleans it. Yeah, and interestingly, some of the fire helmets, they look very heavy. In fact, these last three cases are international helmets, and this one you'll be able to see is from Singapore, and it looks super heavy. And she said it's actually very light. She thinks it's made out of aluminum. So yeah, interesting stuff. Some of these also have feathers, which doesn't make sense to have on a fire helmet. You know, a lot of times they get dirty, things fall on the helmet, and of course they would get burned by the fire. But I've heard that some of these helmets are more for parade, for show. These are actually helmets that were worn by the firemen to fight fires. You got a Band-Aid on. Got an owl. Your shoes. Band-Aids make it feel better, huh? Yeah, they help. All right. Any questions about any toys or fire helmets?
He hasn't gotten there yet.
Okay.
They're all real firefighter helmets. It's just from long time ago until now.
All right. Yep. We can keep moving this way a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about these fire pumpers. Okay, we have two really old pumpers that are hand drawn and hand pumpers. So this was Van Wert's first pumper, right here. This one over here. So it's from 1871, and it weighs almost 2,000 pounds, and that is without the water, in the tank. So I cannot imagine having to hand draw this thing. But how it works is you would bring this thing close to a water source, a pond or a lake or something, and this hose would go down into the water. And these hand pumpers, all right, firefighters would get on either side and start pumping. And I found out that they don't actually, each side, they don't pump at the same time. They have to alternate. So when this side comes down, the other side has to go up. And that's how it works. And this piece right here, this dome, somehow, I don't know the science behind it, yeah, but it helps with the pressure. And somehow the pressure builds up in here, and once you hook a hose to it, that's how water shoots out. These right here are also hand drawn. These are hose carts. And this is another hand pumper over here. The people, the firefighters actually pull this. The horse doesn't pull this one. Yeah, so these are really old pieces. And this right here is what we call a ladder cart, and this one is horse drawn, okay? And I can only imagine, I'm sure the firefighters are glad it was horse drawn and not hand drawn, because this is a heavy piece. And so different ladders that the firefighters were using on this cart.